Good afternoon, Westwood, and welcome to the Wolverine Report, episode 39. Joined as always, co-host Evan Cardimino, Charlotte Lynch, technical director, and I'm Morgan Donahue. And folks, today's episode, we got a fantastic episode for you. We got someone on this episode, is a man who needs no introduction in town, a voice that has been, you can hear it on Thatcher Street in the midst of the fall, driving as it perpetuates from Flayhive Field during a nice fall football game. Someone who graduated from Westwood, spent a lot of time here in Westwood, raised his family here in Westwood, and we are delighted to talk to Jay Resha, the voice of the Westwood Wolverines, and also Westwood resident, longtime Westwood resident, and absolutely delighted to have you on, Jay, and talk shop and talk some fun stories about your Westwood High School experience. And also your experience being in town and being a father, raising your family in town. So, thank you for joining us, and how are you?
Excellent. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Evan, Charlotte, everybody who makes this stuff happen. You guys do great work, so I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy to share some of those stories from the past because having hit a big birthday this year, I don't need to tell you which birthday it is.
29, right?
Something like that, yeah, or at least 25, a couple of those. So I do have a lot of stories, and growing up in Westwood, there are a lot of different people I've met along the way and a lot of stories, and so many of them revolve around sports, in Westwood High. So now going into the second generation with my own kids there, it's fun. It's rewarding. It's fun. It's exciting. So I'm happy to share some of those stories with you. So you lead the way.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And, I'd like to typically first question I like to ask, especially for residents and alumni, is, what were some of your earliest memories growing up in the town of Westwood?
Sure. I grew up behind the Donahue School, basically, on Fearing Drive. So we would walk to the school. We would play outside. And, we're the generation that we were never inside. When the weather was good, your parents would say, go play outside. And we went to New Hampshire for most of the summer, so we were gone. But during the year, it was outdoor weather unless it was raining all the time. Yeah. What did we have? We had Bergson's. Yeah. Was a big night out. Was Bergson's to go get ice cream, Bubbling Brook, Yulden's, the stores that were there, which are mostly gone by now. But thank God Bubbling Brook is still around. Yeah. It was a smaller town. Yeah. As you know. And
did I hear that there was a Carvel store in Westwood by Lambert's?
There was Carvel ice cream. I remember that. And there's another good one because growing up where I grew up, Smith Drive was like the exit out of our neighborhood, and we weren't allowed to walk that or use our bikes to get there until a certain age, whatever age that was, tagging along with my older sister. And there was a little pathway right before that East Street overpass where you could walk down the dirt and get to the Lambert's parking lot, and Carvel was there, and so that was a big rite of passage, was when you could go and get ice cream for yourself.
So I'm thinking of your area town, and I have a good laugh because I was at the alumni golf tournament, and John Buckley's there, and Colin Vogelsang are there, and they were having a good laugh talking about these old tackle football days. And I'd have to imagine you were probably involved in some of those in some capacity, but they would say there'd be kids 5 years younger, but it was like a rite of passage to play, and you had to be tough, and it was like some fun memories that they looked back at. Were you involved in any of those games that went on in the?
A little bit. Yeah. Our group was 4 or 5 years older than those guys, so there were some times that I remember some those guys. John, I've known since a little kid because our fathers were friendly. Yeah. So I've known him since he was a little tyke. So the groups of friends may have crossed over a few times. There were some football, there was baseball, there was tetherball at the Donahue School. I mean, the tetherball, you're hitting the ball around and around the spool. Yeah. We played anything you can play. Yeah. We played it, and you wanted to win when you played. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Bragging rights.
Bragging rights, for sure. Yeah. The older kids would usually win, and then you'd have a hot shot come from the younger kids. But there was a process to it where the older kids did look out for the younger kids, and if somebody got hurt, there'd be responsible kids. And I don't know that we still do it the same way now, but everything is so structured. But it's just different.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had a number of guests, and that area of Westwood, part of Islington. And our guests are very prideful of Islington, and a lot of great sports athletes out of there. Was there a sense of pride you felt back then, or is that something more, today with the kids coming out of Islington today?
I think I feel that it's something newer.
Yeah.
I don't remember feeling like, well, I'm an Islington kid or I'm on this side of town. We were all kids in town.
Yeah.
And there, you may have thought about neighborhoods a little bit, but not so much Islington versus the other side or anything like that. It was just the kids that you played with. That's who you played with.
Yeah. And I've never really understood the concept of, is Islington considered like a village in Westwood? Because back, if you look at yearbooks in the 70s, if someone lived in Islington, this is when they had the addresses of like where people live, it would say, if it was just regular area parts of town, and I mean regular by saying non-Islington, I guess, it would say like High Street, 90 High Street. If someone lived in Islington, it would say like their address and then say Islington. And it was like they would kind of separate that, and it never, what's the lineage of Islington?
I'm not quite sure how it became a village or a separate entity. I've seen some of those old-timey letterhead or things from town. I've seen Cloverland or Pond Plain or little neighborhoods that were really designated as such, and nobody really uses them now. I don't know. I'm a little bit of a Westwood historian, but not enough.
Yeah, I'll have to get Tom Aaron on that, or some of the old school Westwood guys. They get deep in the weeds, I'm sure.
So talking about high school now, you grew up in a great time for Westwood sports, and you were at an exceptional time of Westwood High School sports when you were there. Tell us about some of your favorite memories of being a Westwood athlete during that time.
Oh, for sure. Now, Westwood athlete or being part of a great era may be two different things. I know that I was a varsity tennis player and 4 years of football. I know that I had 0 Tri-Valley League All-Star selections for myself. So it wasn't so much about me. But I'll tell you what, I really did grow up in a great time. As a little kid, I was inspired. We were winning everything. The girls' basketball had how many years in a row of winning the Tri-Valley League. And the football team had Super Bowls in 84, 88, guys that inspired me to play football, frankly. We found a lot of great success. There were 6, if I looked it up once, there were 6 Dalton Awards.
Yes.
You've heard of those Dalton trophies that the Boston Globe used to give out? And no town had as many as we had. Now, we haven't had any in the last couple of decades, so I'm hoping we get back to it. In fact, I just learned we finished 2nd in the Dalton Award the year before last. So I think we're right on the cusp of getting back up there, which is pretty cool. But yeah, there were some great names, there were some great teams. And then in high school, it continued with us. And although unfortunately the girls' hoops had that streak end while I was in high school. In fact, I was at that Holliston game where Kara Walters, that great player who ended up at Connecticut, she couldn't be stopped. and that league win streak ended then. But otherwise, great memories. And we have Wendy Rowe. Think about Wendy Rowe with all the swimming championships.
She's a great basketball player,
She was
right?
in my class, yes.
Yeah.
Basketball, swimming, played with some great players. Elio Imbernoni, Mike McFarland, God rest his soul, played on the 91 team, and then Elio 92 when we won it all. Those were fantastic memories.
So when I look at athletes and I look at kind of just the ones that are on another level, obviously all scholastic are very important, and all of those players you mentioned were. But like the ones that really take it up another gear are people who are all scholastic for more than 1 year. So Wendy Rowe, amazing swimmer. When I look at the archives, she was, I think, all scholastic her junior, senior year.
That sounds right.
Elio as well, all scholastic junior, senior year. Sue McLaughlin.
Yes.
Terrific basketball player.
Right after me.
Yeah, yeah. But like that's unheard of. That is so difficult to do, especially in that era too, which is very competitive in sports.
And in certain sports, you even if you were the star, you were not going to play as a freshman. So you really had to make an impact in a shorter time. Yeah. In some of those sports.
Yeah, I got to ask you, being a hockey guy, and know you're more of like kind of football and tennis and basketball and whatnot. But when you have a guy like Mike Welby in those teams, and you were underclassmen when he was there, but you got some of the guys in your grade. I think Timmy Lewis at one point was around your
he was my
era.
class.
Yeah.
He was also lived right through the woods. We both walked to Donahue. We were friends for many years.
And fan of the program, by the way. Yeah, we had him on for the second period of one of the games this year. But you also have a guy like Russ Flynn. You had Ed Galvin, and then there was just so much talent. Mark Pastor. as a non-hockey guy and what they were doing, did it still draw people to go see them play and see kind of the back-to-back state championships and how special that run was for them?
It did. It was exciting for my class. We were part of it. A lot of kids in high school, in the fall, you go to the football games. In the winter, you've got the hockey and basketball games. They really were the top sports. I didn't go to as many hockey games as I should have. When I look back, I didn't go to every one of them. I did go to, obviously, the state championships. And I remember my freshman year in college, so now you're into March of 94, going back, because I think we went to the final and lost in 94.
Yes,
I was at that game.
Yep.
And seeing people again. And of course, that may segue us into talking about some of the things later on, how I've stayed involved.
Yes, absolutely. And, high school, you were involved. Involved is a perfect word. When I look at morning announcements, the morning announcers, you were involved, I believe, with student government throughout your 4 years.
Off and on.
Yep.
Class vice president one year. I was never class president, but
and I believe
involved.
Alex, your son, involved as well in school government. Awesome.
Congratulations to him. He's now
shout out Alex.
Right, a class president. Just was reelected, so he'll be for his second year.
Incredible.
As a sophomore.
But I also see so many other things too. So like the academic decathlon, the Mr. Westwood competition, which awesome.
I lost.
But it was it looks awesome. You got involved and you really were maximizing your time at the high school. What were some of your favorite memories outside of sports that come to mind for some of the activities you did?
Yes, I was a busy kid. I had football, I had sports, I had AP classes, I had all sorts of stuff going on. And when you mentioned the morning announcements, I'll tell you, I had forgotten about that. That after years of doing Westwood football, I did forget that before I did all that, I was on the microphone once a week doing those morning announcements. And I don't know how I had forgotten it, but I did.
What did those consist of? Was it just kind of the daily briefings, lunch type stuff?
It was a 1 or 2 minute blurb that the administrators, teachers would hand you. There were 6 of us. We'd rotate doing that, and I think you did it for a week at a time, and then you took 4 weeks off, and then came back or something like that. But it would be, good morning, students. Welcome, and today is such and such. It is A block or A day, whatever they call it, day one, and then you would, I think you still did the Pledge of Allegiance, and then there would be whatever special announcements. The gymnasium is closed tonight for voting or something like that, which reminds me to vote tonight.
Yeah.
And you did a lot in high school, and I think for a lot of these students, it's important to try new things and get out and do a lot. And you're a parent now. How much has doing all of this in high school has helped you in your professional life and just outside of school? And then are those lessons that you're trying to impart on your kids now and encourage them to do more?
Agree 100% on that, because aside from being comfortable with a microphone in front of my face and being able to talk to a crowd, and there'd be a shout out there to Stephanie Kelsch, who did oral English junior year.
I had her as well.
You remember that class, of course, and I think they've changed the name happily since then. But what a great class it was to learn how to speak in public, really. And so I probably would not have had that microphone in front of my hand the next year if it hadn't been for that class. It was great to learn and to get comfortable in a group. And yes, those skills stay with you later on in business or in whatever endeavors I'm in. You have to be able to talk to people, no matter from whoever you're talking to. You have to be able to talk to them.
She was fantastic. I'm glad you mentioned her because I took oral English, and she didn't really care how you would present. She just wanted you to get up and talk about something and do it effectively. And I remember doing a skit where she's like, all right, your turn. You got to come up and do a demonstration. So she didn't care. Like you could say, I'm going to show you how to cook, poached eggs. I went up and I said, I'm going to be Steve Irwin. And my backpack is a 10-foot crocodile. So I'm going in an Australian accent, and I'm like, oh, it's a beautiful and I'm like, you got to be very, very quiet. And she is laughing the whole time. And I don't know if I'm going to get an F or an A. She loved it, and she was like fantastic. She's like, you know what? You took the creativity, you ran with it. You actually, did actually satisfy what I'm looking for is, a demonstration. It might have been far different, but it was such a fun class to be able to just get reps and to learn how to deal with things like nerves and just how to be able to have a plan and execute and all that. And I'm so glad you mentioned her because some of the fun topics are having mutual teachers, and
absolutely,
absolutely.
We're a few years apart, but a lot of them were still there.
Yep.
Tom Brown for
Yes.
AP History
Yep.
and Mike Milan for English. A guy who, for somebody who later on did a lot of writing, which I have done, I had zero interest in it in high school. But he was a great teacher. When I look back, I said, you know what, I really was absorbing, even if it wasn't translating at the time.
Yeah.
But so those lessons stuck with me and made a difference later.
Well, there's a funny story that kind of has a connection with just mutual teachers and whatnot. Also one of your classmates, but when I was doing a podcast episode with Buck and Vinci, we're talking about Mike Griffin, him being on the athletic alumni in the athletic alumni group, and I was saying John Griffin. And they're laughing at me like, why are you saying John Griffin? I'm like, well, the teacher at Westwood High School, Mr. Griffin, and I believe his son was one of your classmates.
We had John. Yes, teacher was John Griffin, classmate was John Griffin.
And Joe Vinci was calling John Bateman Jason Bateman. So we're having so many laughs because it was unintentional, but it was just like when the cameras are on, the lights are like this. It's hard to remember things when you're sitting in your car or just sitting at home.
It's true. Some of the names disappear, but some of them are funny stories because we had Mrs. Desprez for ceramics.
Yes.
For those of us who took ceramics who needed a something a little bit different as a senior elective.
Yep.
But we would call her Mrs. Declay when we were not paying attention. Desprez. No, it's not Declay. We were working with clay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was Charlie Flahive, your principal?
He was the vice principal.
Vice principal. Okay.
Yeah. So in fact, I went to his office a time or two.
Yeah.
Just to say hi.
Just to check the lighting.
Not as he was the dean of discipline or anything, but.
Yeah.
He was. I've been in somewhat contact with him over the years. Great guy.
Yeah.
What a career.
Oh,
Obviously,
gosh.
with the field being named for him, he made that much of a difference. But yes, we had a little bit of fear of Charlie Flahive.
Do you think he sided or he had a special place in his heart for the hockey players?
He might have.
I've heard they would get away with a little bit more than say football and I think it might have been your senior year. Was one of your players not able to play in a state championship game?
There might be a story about that. There may have been some shenanigans going on that prevented everybody from being eligible. But Westwood would not be the first institution to have to deal with some sort of business like that.
Bill Crabtree was telling us stories about Westwood driving a Millis and wearing, I think, like camo in the woods and whatnot. And, Joe Guerin getting a call saying, what are these guys doing? Get them out of here and whatnot. But it makes me think, on the topic of football, you had a legendary football coach in Eric Wolfinger. He has the highest win percentage for any coach in the state of Massachusetts for football over a 10-year span. And I think he only coached 10 years at Westwood. What was it like playing for him, and what made him the coach he is that was just, always winning games?
He was unlike any other coach I played for. And the lessons we learned from him, I tried to take some of those when I was coaching flag football 30 years later. To be that organized, to be such a master of offense and creative with the plays he was drawing up. And to be able to get us to motivate us and to have great assistant coaches, another trait I stole because I always had more assistants than I needed the help as a coach for youth sports. But the assistant coaches, each one had their role, and I think Eric knew how to put everybody in their role and build the team that way and motivate us for each game, and to have that kind of success, 101 wins in 10 or 11 years, whatever it was. I remember. At the football banquet in 1995 or 96, they asked me to help out emceeing, and that was the year he broke that record, that winning percentage.
Yeah.
And I was at a loss for words as I was trying to prepare some words to say about it. I said, "What can you say about it?" We've had the Tom Lambs and the great coaches, General Lee, the great coaches in Massachusetts. But over a short period of time, what Eric did, and at a very small school by comparison, was fantastic.
And mind you, he took over, I think his previous experience was he was the Pop Warner coach. He was involved with like baseball. He coached Legion.
Which he still is involved in the baseball side.
I hear he's up in games. And he started the Rainbows, which I hear was a terrific program in town. But he went from coaching Pop Warner to the high school. And Bill Crabtree tells a story where they were doing their first scrimmage and his first play call was like a little pass out to the flat, and he's like, "What are you doing? Like, that's not our offense. We're a running offense." But he knew the players because he coached them in Pop Warner, where he knew their strengths and he knew how to use them and he knew how to game plan and all that. So he was like blown away after seeing how he would run the team and the play calls.
Sure, and being able to adapt his team to what he knew about the players rather than saying, well, this is the system and you have to play it that way. Yeah. He wasn't like that at all. He knew what he had and how to work with it.
Now, every time I bring up his name, Buck and Vincey will say the phrase, "run it back." Is that something he used to say frequently?
He would say it many times if things didn't go well in practice. If a play didn't work, we would have to run it back, and sometimes you would run it back many, many times. And if you did that, you would be running it forward because you'd be running the sprints at the end of practice, many of them. But again, that's how you learn.
Yeah.
So talk us through a little bit about your start as a PA announcer. So after leaving Westwood High School, you went to college, come back. How did you start doing PA? What was sort of the impetus to start that?
It's a great story, and I've told it many times. I try not to let the story change over the years or get any bigger or bolder like the fish that you caught. But the truth is that I had a parent who was ill, and so I go off to college, but I was coming home on the weekends. And by doing that, I was able to go to games. And the very first home game, there I am with my old friends, and this is that I'm going to watch the game. But they needed a chain crew, and they needed volunteers. I went down and did the chain crew. So I did exactly one game of chain crew. The next game, a week or two later, who knows, I'm in there and I'm watching the game with a friend, and Joe Guerin himself is doing the game because the fellow Roger who did it for years before that, I don't know, he was no longer doing it. So Joe was doing it, and I thought that he wasn't very good at it. And I also thought that now that I'm in college, I can tell him that and not get in trouble because I'm no longer a student at Westwood High, so I don't have to worry about repercussions. So halftime comes. Joe comes walking down the stairs right by me. He says, "Hey, Resha, how you doing?" And I said, "Oh, Dr. Guerrero, nice to see you." I said, "Oh, you're not very good at that." And he grabbed my shirt like in the movies. He grabbed it like this and yanked me up as though I was still a freshman. And he says, "Oh, Resha, you think you're so good? You get up there and do it. You come with me right now." And he marched me up the stairs into the booth, and he sat me down at the chair, handed me the microphone, said, "You do it." So I did the second half. I figured it out on the fly of what to do because I had been listening to so many games. And 33 years later, we are still here, and I'm still doing them.
We're thankful for it. I mean, I've mentioned to you numerous times, but I don't know people at home, but I'm thankful for you because for 2 years I didn't have a home football field, and we played a home game at Medfield versus Medfield one time. We played in Norwood versus Bellingham. That was our home field for a game. And then, thankfully to Severian, we had a little bit more consistency, at least having a field. But we'd have to play like some games on like Thursday at 4 o'clock or Saturdays at 10 a.m. before they would play at 1. And there was no inconsistency with that. We kind of came together just to all you really can do is embrace the opportunity of just having an excuse to come together and play some games, win some games, but the guiding light through all that process is we had a home voice. And we could have played the game on Mars. We could have played the game, at any time of day. But when you have Jay Resha on the mic saying, "Touchdown, Wolverines," that would fire us up. And it was so beneficial for us because it felt like home. And I want to personally thank you because it means a lot. And it was some important games. We went back-to-back Super Bowls.
I recall, the 12-0, 12-1, or 13-0 season that year. I thank you. I'm flattered by that. I know that you guys have had a group of guys and a group of coaches that really made it happen. I've always said I'm very happy to be a tiny little cog in a very, very large wheel. And those years on the road were very interesting without having a home field. They also coincided with the only couple of years where I didn't live in Westwood. I had just gotten married and I lived in Needham, so I'm driving all over the place anyway. Although Needham to Norwood is not very far, but it was a strange couple of years. And I was very happy in 2006 when we opened the new Flay High Field, and we've had a home since then.
Which just shows too, like, incredible. I mean, you're at a point in your life where you're probably further away from Westwood than you've ever been, at that point. You're far enough outside of high school. You're not living in town. And, it's not like today where you're living in Westwood and you have kids in town and whatnot. But you still stuck around. You still did it. Like, what kept you involved, and what were the motivation factors that where you're like, yeah, no, I absolutely still want to do this?
Yes. By then, I had already been at the microphone for 10 years. By the time they closed the old school and we had those 2 or 3 years of purgatory without a field. And I knew it was something I really enjoyed doing. Yeah. And I was hopeful that I would buy a house in Westwood as my wife and I, proceeded through our life. So I didn't want to lose touch. So I did want to stay involved and help out where I could. And that was one way to do that. And of course has remained as such and has even grown into basketball and other sports that I've covered.
And for those at home, that old field was a special place and a lot of great memories. We had the run, Joe Vinci was saying, when you would walk from the locker room to the field, he's like, yeah, we'd wear our whole cleats down because it was all concrete. You're walking
asphalt,
this whole
concrete,
distance, and if that wasn't good enough, you get into the fence, which for the most part it still had it was still somewhat closed. You had to kind of like go through the chains and move it around sometimes to get in. And then there was still walking on some hard surface before, like the steeplechases right there, and you had to walk across that to get to the field. But, for those at home that aren't familiar with the old field and the dynamics of that, talk a little bit about that and how special that was.
I loved the old field. Whitley Field was its name,
yes.
Unofficially or officially. So many successes we had at that field. So many great games were played there in good weather and later in the rain and even in the snow. And I also remember the practice field,
yes.
Which for those who are familiar with the new high school, that there is a little environmental area that is fenced off on the visitor's side in between the school and the field. Well, that is right where the practice field used to be. And interesting that it has become an environmental wetland.
Yeah.
It was always a wetland.
Yeah.
So you would always get dirty and filthy dirty at practice on one end of that field.
And it used to be kind of that walkway. If you were going to walk from the high school to the middle school, you could just walk through that area, and it would take you up the hill and take you to the middle school. But it was such a unique place. They used to have the carnival right there and the cement or the pavement right outside.
I remember when the carnival would come every May. That would be a big deal.
Big draw.
That was our carnival.
Yeah.
The amusement park comes to Westwood just once a week, and the Monday whenever I saw the buses were not where they should be, I said it's Carnival Week.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Yeah,
that was the best. And what was your go-to during the carnival? Would you hit up the rides or would you do like the dollar games? I mean, those are.
I would
fun.
do both.
Yeah,
I certainly would. I would find whatever buddies were around and. Whatever group of friends I was with, and we would go and get a few bucks in your pocket, and you were trying to win a few things at those games of skill, which were really not because they're so rigged.
It was so rigged.
But then you would want to go on the rides too. Yeah. I loved that stuff, and it was almost like we knew it was a part of our youth. It was, you always say you didn't appreciate it while you were doing it or when you look back. But I felt like we did appreciate it. I felt like every year I said, this is the best time. I love this week, and because summer's coming, and I know I would go away for most of it, but that was the best part of Westwood was in the spring.
Oh, it was so exciting, especially when you'd see it come to town, and you'd see it sitting there, but it wasn't, totally put together yet. And then the next day it'd be
all
up
the trailers,
and
then all of a sudden they become the rides.
Yeah, fried dough, would eat like Vikings. It was a fun time.
We ate too much. Yes.
So when you started the PA stuff, you started with football. At what point did you expand to some of the other sports?
So around about 2000, you ever remember me doing any basketball games? Because I did
the girls' games, maybe like 5 years ago.
Okay, so that's the recent time. Yeah. So between about 2000 and 2005, give or take, whenever we again, like football, I did road games because in the years where we didn't have the gym, there were games played at Nobles. There were games played at Dedham.
Oh, I remember that time. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So I did road games there. I had some first cousins who were playing, a girl and a boy. So Westwood High, we had some Rishas
Erica
came through. Erica and Jason.
She was basketball players. Yeah.
That's right. I don't recall. I mean, the story must not be as good as the Joe Guerin story for football. I don't really recall how I got into basketball. Yeah. Somebody must have asked me to do a game, and then that became a lot of games for a few years.
Yeah.
But then, I've always been a skier in the winters, and so there's always been a push and pull for me of I love doing the games, but I wanted to go to New Hampshire this weekend and go skiing. So I've always done a little of both. And for the next 5-10 years, I didn't do any basketball games, and we also were welcoming babies, and we were very busy at home. So then about 5 or 6 years ago, during COVID, before or after, I don't remember, I approached Matt Gillis and I said, I'll do a few more basketball games. I'll bring that back.
Still got the fastball left.
And that has become, I do more basketball games now than anything else because there are more on the schedule, but I also love it. I wouldn't say I love it more than football, but basketball is very unique. It's very exciting. I love being part of the game in a way that you're not in football because you really get to scream it out and say three-pointer and all that. And that's a lot of fun.
The fouls, that's the thing what I can certainly appreciate about what you do is the games are so different, and to understand the tone and the language and the timing of that for each sport is very impressive.
I appreciate that you say that. That's the part that's a labor of love, I guess, or a hobby that you really get into and want to do it right. Yeah. And I was inspired as a kid. Some people don't pay attention to the voices in the games, the way that some people don't read the credits at the end of a movie, but I do. Some people do. So I would listen to the voice of Andy Jick, who was the Celtics announcer in the 80s. Larry Bird, and he, and now for the Boston Celtics. He had this weird voice and the way he would inflect things. And that inspired me and still does. And if you listen to me do a basketball game and then go back and listen to one of his, you'll say, oh, Jay Resha's ripping off that guy. That guy later on did BC for many years. Okay. So he did the Celtics and then he did BC where I went. So he was great. And then there have been great guys. Football is a little more one-dimensional. I don't want to say that in a bad way. I mean in a good way. Yeah. You have to do it a certain way for football.
I have a sort of a twofold question here. Is there any sport you haven't PA'd that you would have liked to have gotten into? And then of the sports you do, football, basketball, volleyball, which one would you say is the most difficult to PA?
That's a good question. I can tell you which ones are easier. I can tell you because I've done soccer games, lacrosse games. I wrote them down because I couldn't remember them. I haven't done full seasons of them, but if they've asked me to do a playoff game or a senior night or something like that, I say yes, field hockey, because it's fun. And I've learned, and this comes from getting older, I love doing the senior nights. I love the looks on their faces. I see the kids, presenting the flower to their parents. I've written a little bit of a thing that I read out beforehand on each one of those now, and I've worked on that and honed it over the years. I had the great pleasure of doing a senior night to my own kid this past fall at volleyball. That was really amazing to do and unique, and maybe a little bit of comedy for people as I'm saying. And next is up, and I have to get up and walk towards the walking over with the microphone in my hand to be part of that. It was a great night for Maddie in volleyball, and maybe that's a bit of a separate tangent. But back to your question, basketball is the most demanding in the sense of I do so many things. I've created my own little scorecard that you have to keep track of the fouls. You end up being a helper to the person doing the book next to you. You're bouncing things off each other. Did you miss that? Did you miss that? Nobody ever makes a mistake, right? When we're broadcasting, but you can be you are part of the machinations of the game. Football is a bit more. You need your eyes. When I was the first few years I did football, you had Wallace and Bonner, Jim Bonner and George, I think Wallace, were these two elderly guys who were Westwood guys from way back. They did the scoreboard, and one did the clock and one did the down and distance and all that. Well, those two guys, during every play, they'd be under their breath. 36 made the tackle.
Wow.
42 is the ball carrier.
Wow.
8 with the 8. So I'm getting it fed to me in my other ear.
Incredible.
Against what I see. Yeah. It's foolproof, close to it. They retired. Their last game was the last game at the old Whitley Field.
No kidding.
So at the new place when we opened 2006, 5 or 6, I think 6.
6, yep.
And they were gone by then. So I've been on my own ever since then. So I don't have an assistant. I've tried one a couple of times. I haven't really. I don't know if I want one or not. Yeah. But I have added binoculars to the arsenal over the years to account for the new field. The new uniforms are tougher to see.
They are, especially in the
you guys notice
night
that
games,
stuff, right?
Yeah.
They're shiny and the lights are on them.
Yep.
So it's hard work to say the quarterback, the ball carrier, who threw it, who caught it, and who made the tackle, because parents are upset when you don't get those right. And I want to get it right.
Well, the funny thing is totally agree, and can certainly appreciate that, where having a spotter goes a long way. Sometimes we delay it a few seconds just to hear Jay Resha say who made the tackle, and then I will piggyback off you. So shout out to you for making our lives easier sometimes.
I've done that in reverse as well. I've hesitated a time or two to see if you'll say it. So we're bouncing it off each other, just like in basketball, where I've got the official scorer next to me, and we become a team.
Also,
helping
shout out to you too. You allow these two lunatics in the booth where we're going crazy, but you get just as excited, on the touchdowns and whatnot.
I do, and the one thing I'll say is, have I changed over the years in football? I have, because in the first few years of doing it, Westwood was so successful then that there were a lot of 56-14 scores and 48-7. When it's 41-7 and your guy breaks through for a touchdown, you say, touchdown Wolverines.
Yeah.
But when you're in triple overtime against Holliston in 2013, you're screaming at the top of your lungs when Westwood scores. So I've become louder because we're no longer so far ahead of the pack. These games are competitive.
Absolutely.
We're playing for league championships. We're not going 12-0.
Yeah.
But we're trying to get there. So you can actually get more excited with what you do, because it's a competitive, close game.
Yeah, we've seen that. We've seen that with the sports too. Like, we're doing a girls lacrosse game, and we know they're off to a good start. We kind of see, all right, this might be a 17-2.
There have been a few of those for them.
But then there's also like a Timmy Malloy in overtime, where
what a great game.
they got to lock us up in the insane asylum for yelling and going nuts. But that's what's the beauty of kind of just getting involved in the sports. Is each game, each sport, each team is different. I do like the challenge of just learning it, and not being afraid to be bad at it. And that's the question I want to ask you is, when you look back at the first basketball game you did, the first football game that you did, how much time have you put into creating a routine around, maybe like a pre-shot routine, like you have in golf? All right, if I'm going to hit this ball and I want to put it there, what's my thought process? So, like, when you get in the chair, what are some of the things that I check off on my list, and how do I rinse, repeat that every game? Like, what's your process when it comes to getting in seat?
Now, you mentioned golf there.
Yeah.
We said we were not going to talk about my golf game, right?
No, we cut that.
No, but as far as the routine goes, the only thing I've learned is that the more organized I am, the earlier I'm there, the better. Yeah. Because especially as the season goes on, or if the team's competitive, the distractions will come. Yeah. There will be knocks at the door. People want to come in. Can you read this off?
Yes.
Can we also do this? Also, there's a raffle. Sometimes that's right before I'm about to begin talking, and I don't have time to make that list. So
you're unbelievable with that, by the way. So I got to learn this. Do you do like yoga before these games? Because you are so patient, and like you said, there'll be like 10 people in the booth, and 8 of them might be like, regular game day. Some people just might find themselves in the booth, and you're walking around, and it's like, we don't know what's going on. But like, you're dealing with a lot of different chaos before kickoff with, all right, we're doing this read, here's the starting lineups, all of that. Like, how do you get yourself mentally prepared for those games? Because you are very patient, and you're also in the zone as well. And I've noticed that, and it's, pretty unique.
I try to stay level-headed with it. I think that, especially now, where my kids are both in high school, where I'm in this second generation of doing it, I'm very aware of where we are on the timeline of life, as it were, and I appreciate so much the opportunity to scratch the itch of a hobby like this, or a labor of love, a hobby, whatever you want to call it. I love doing it, and I have enough repetitions that I've seen games like that, where like Halloween game or the first game this year, where there were just so many things happening. Yeah. I couldn't read them all off. Yeah. I was reading them off in between little timeouts in the third quarter, still getting to the reads. But I've also been at games where there was nobody there. Yeah. I've been at Thursday night games when the team had a losing record in early November, or consolation games, now that they have the tournament that they have now, the way they structure it. Yeah. So I actually appreciate. I love the busy games. I love when it's nonstop, and I'm able to handle it. I'm able to. You do have to at some point be like, I'm starting now. I can't do that yet. Yeah. And then click, and here we go.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
the same old me at that point.
Yep.
So you mentioned your kids are in high school now, and we were there covering some of the volleyball games this season. You had a very special moment being there, PA announcing for your daughter's senior night. How special is it for you as a father to watch your kids grow up and be there at the games for them, supporting them, and just PA announcing their games? And also, how is it hard to separate, the PA announcing from dad mode?
That part was pretty easy, the separation. It's very rewarding to be involved and to have to have something else that we're doing as a family, even though it's a community event and it's at the school, but it's another thing that we're doing together. So, and my wife's in the stands, my son's in the stands, everybody's there. I have to also mention that I only now have one kid in high school because Maddie graduated 2 days ago. So
That's Maddie.
that's correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Congrats.
And she turned 18. She graduated high school. So all of a sudden, I've got one adult who's I have to prepare for that next challenge. But what a great season it was for her. In fact, the notes I wrote before I came here, the longest part was about this past fall, and how amazing it was to see her work so hard, and work her way into the starting lineup, and then for them to go on that run to make it to the Final Four, which no Westwood volleyball team had ever made it that far. That was extremely emotional. That was in a good way, and even when they lost to a juggernaut of a team out there in Westboro, that was a highlight that compares with me remembering when we won the Super Bowl in 1992 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off of that, so we have no kids on the team, but it's hard not to be just amazed at the leadership they show when there's a lot of pressure on the line and the lights are the absolute brightest. And as a parent, you're raising your kids to prepare them for life, and to prepare them for, there's going to be some stressful situations in life. There's also going to be anything great you want in life. You're going to have to go out and earn it. You're going to have to go out and work hard. And sports is a terrific kind of platform for kids to, really work hard towards something and also build that confidence to know, all right, well, I just accomplished this. So, you know what? And I know the hard work and everything that went into it. When you look at it as a parent and then you see them where there's a lot of pressure on the line, and they are handling it beautifully. And then you see Maddie rifle off 5 serves in a row and getting on a run. Like, how does that feel as a parent? How proud are you of her and the amazing thing she did on the volleyball court this year?
Yeah, very, very proud. And very proud whether or not she had those 5 serves in a row or not, or whatever streaks that she had and successes she had. Putting the work in. When you're a sophomore or junior and you don't make varsity or you don't make JV, whatever level you're trying to get to, and she had some disappointments along the way, and then to make varsity as a senior, and to have that success is fantastic. And it is that sports can be a metaphor for life or a microcosm, in that you are learning about sports when you play them, but you're learning about life. Those lessons that you're learning on the field are the same lessons you're going to carry with you later on when you go to college or when you have a job or when you are running a business, whatever you're doing. The things you learn as a kid will stick with you. And that's why there's that pedagogical element to what I do, to what we all do as volunteers. We are trying to do something that will be good for the kids, that will help them.
And is she going to be attending Boston College?
Boston College.
So same alma mater as you, and what a connection BC and Westwood has. Talk a little bit about that. So you had a lot of people around your time at Westwood that went to Boston College, and a lot of them are still here in Westwood as well.
For sure. My wife Kendra and I both went to BC, and several family members for me, my dad and very many cousins. Erica, of course, the younger cousins. Yeah. I've been going to BC football games since the Doug Flutie years. Excuse me. And even before, if you go to the late 70s when they were terrible, those are some of the first memories I have of going to games and nobody was there. Yeah. And then there was the Doug Flutie years, and we went to the Cotton Bowl in 1984 and down in Dallas, Texas. So I was a 9 or 10-year-old, whatever I was. Yeah. And those were fantastic memories with my cousins. And we went to the Tangerine Bowl in Miami the year before that. I forgot. So then going to BC, then at that point, they'd had some down years, and then they came back up, and Tom Coughlin was there, and they went back to bowl games, and they were in the national picture again. it was really fun to be part of a BC family. In Westwood, guys like Greg Warren, I think I mentioned before, a guy I watched playing ball, and he was a neighborhood guy. My sister knew him, and now I go out for drinks with Greg Warren, and we watch our kids play, and so it's cool to keep those relationships.
So you mentioned the Flutie era, and obviously the Westwood connection. How special was it seeing a guy like Scott Harrington on that Cotton Bowl team, a captain out of Westwood High School?
Yep. That was exciting for us. And I was young enough that I actually didn't absorb just how wonderful that was, how special that was, and how cool it was for a local kid like that to go to that level. I learned that later on. It dawned on me over the years. Yeah. There was a video came out on VHS that came out after that 1984 season, and it was called Why Eagles Soar. And it was, of course, produced by the athletic department, and alumni like my dad would buy it. I would watch that video every year on September 1st, clear into my 30s. Really? I might have even been in my 40s. Whenever it was that I no longer had a VHS player,
it was a rite of
at
passage.
My disposal. Yeah, I would watch it every September to get myself psyched up for football season, no matter what stage of life I was in. Yeah. And those are the memories that stick with you, that you have as a little kid.
So one other thing I want to ask you, you do a lot. Most people in town probably know you as a PA announcer, but a lot of people probably know you for this, the Westward, which is in Westwood Living. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about this opportunity. You mentioned earlier in the episode you weren't much of a writer in high school, or that wasn't your first passion.
Very true. I like I said, I was in Mr. Milan's English class, and we knew Mr. Chatterton. Was he still there for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I never took his class, but I knew him. So I was aware of the English teachers, and I took we had oral English with Mrs. Kelsch. Yep. But I was never feeling like I was going to be a writer or journalism major or anything like that. I just never thought about it. But when I did write, I enjoyed it. Yeah. And so in college, there was one class where a professor said to me, you're really good at this. You should do this. And it was not an English class, but I wrote a paper and she liked it. And I said, oh, well, thank you. And as an elective, towards the end of my college time, I took a creative writing course and loved it. Yeah. Loved it. And it was like a light bulb go off. And it doesn't matter whether you're 22 or 30. At some point, light bulbs can go off for you. And some kids know when they're 14 what they're going to do. I certainly did not. But of course, I've had a career in business, so I did not have time to go back and say, well, I just want to be a writer. Writing has become another hobby, another side gig. And I wrote for the Westwood Press. Those who remember when we had our own newspaper, that was 2010, maybe 2015. So I had little kids at home. A lot of those articles were about the trials and tribulations of a young parent, but it was structured just like Westward is now. When Tom Lydon came along and we became friends, coached his daughters, became very good friends and still are, and he conceived the idea for this magazine. And I was aware of this type of magazine in a community like ours, and I suggested to have somebody who's different, who's not one of your expert contributors, and somebody who just has something interesting to say that people might want to read. And so it satisfies my creative itch, and I think it's good for us to have another voice in the magazine. I'm thrilled that Tom is unbelievable to grow it the way he has to becoming the number 2 largest magazine in the country in terms of revenue and page size for Best Version Media, I think is the company that runs that. He's out there every day to grow it and make it bigger and better. He's doing such a great job, and I'm happy to be, again, a little cog in a big wheel.
And how many of these have you produced so far? I have an older edition, so I don't have the latest Westwood Living. But
I looked it up, or one of your old podcasts, or I think it might be the same number. I'm at 38 or 39 right now is the number of Westwards since it was. It's incredible.
Yeah,
first one.
39th episode. And
I'm about to submit column number 39. We're right on. We're both working hard, buddy.
The universe is aligned right now in Westwood.
And one other thing you mentioned that was interesting is you talked about, how you kind of got this later on in life. And one of the things that when we have students who work with us, whether it's behind the camera commentating, is we try to encourage them to take risks. Mm-hmm. You mentioned like you weren't 14 when you knew it. I'm a little different because I've known I wanted to do it since I was a kid.
Sure.
But there are things you find in life that you might say, oh, I didn't realize I liked that till later. How important was it for you to, you said it was an elective class, to take that risk of taking class that, yeah, it's not something that I don't think is my first love, but try something new, seeing where it gets you. And now you have this column that's going on almost 40 strong and is probably one of the most recognizable columns in town.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I know that some people go right to the back page. They want to be entertained, and the rest of the magazine is full of all the businesses that make this town run. But for me, it's been great to try different things, and whether that means broadcasting, whether that means writing. I guess I'm a small business sort of person at heart, and so I've always worked in small businesses or run them, and I haven't been afraid to try something new. I was in an entirely new industry when I was in my 40s. I made a change there, and so those skills, and I try to tell young people without being preachy, but I say, it's okay to try something new at any point in life. It's the skills that you've made along the way that are going to allow you to try new things or to make transitions or to deal with curveballs that come your way in life, because not everybody gets a job at 22, and that's what they're doing through retirement age. In fact, very few of us do that. So those are the skills that will help being able to deal with whatever comes your way.
Yeah, and the Westward is terrific, and I've had many people, bring it up because we have the In Touch, and people will talk about the magazine. And I remember talking to like Maria and Bill Ryan. They're like, we love Jay Resha's, Westward every month, and kind of reminds me of like Sports Illustrated and read Bill Riley. It'd be at the end.
Rick Riley.
Rick Riley.
You're thinking of basketball coach,
yes,
the great Bill Riley.
Yes, legend. But it reminds me of Rick Riley. Did you have some inspirational people that had a similar theme? Where it was like something that you could go to every month, and you knew it was going to be creative. You knew it was going to be, fun, because you do make it creative and fun with like the Billy Joel stuff, and you making sure people are awake.
Throwing some Easter eggs in there and doing some challenges to people to keep track of things I'm writing about. And if I gave you a Mount Rushmore of those who inspired me, Rick Riley would certainly be on it, if not at the top of it.
Yeah.
As a Sports Illustrated subscriber from about the age of 9 onward, I read him every week. And then later it was Steve Rushin who took over that space. In the sporting news, you had Dave Kindred. In the entertainment world, comedy, you had Dave Barry. You had guys like that. You had Paul Harvey. One of the Westward columns a couple of years ago was a straight-on tribute to him, phrased like one of those the rest of the story. You remember all those on the radio.
Yep.
So those people certainly inspired me. They entertained me when I wasn't doing my schoolwork or later on doing my work. Those are the things that always brought me great pleasure, would be to be entertained by writers like that who knew how to hold you. And it didn't have to be a book or a short story. It can be one page. It can be 1,000 words. It can be something of any length that will hold your attention and entertain you, make you laugh, make you cry, make you think. Now I'm bringing in Jimmy V, who said those are the 3 things you should do every day. Make you laugh, cry, and think. And a lot of times when I write, I try to make you laugh and cry and think all on one page.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, I see with what you do, what we do is very similar. We're doing play-by-play, and some of the similarities I look, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is balance. So I'm not married, no kids. I work, and I used to be a workaholic. I used to work long hours, long days. And one thing I needed in my life was balance. I needed something where I could be away from work, where when I would get to work, it'd be less burnout, but also feel fulfilled with something that I'm doing, and something fun, and having the balance of doing other things, like where in your world, you're a father, you're professional, and you volunteer as PA, so you have those areas of your life, and to have balance, but to also incorporate volunteerism and to giving back to the community. How important were those for you? They're very important for me, but like how important is that in your life where you feel fulfillment? But to add to that too, like how important do you think it is to get involved in the community and to make it a better place?
It is important, and there are 2 little prongs of an answer that come to me right away. One is my aunt who told me when we first had kids we said, oh, we're volunteering at this thing. And she said, the people you see that are volunteering at this preschool, whatever it was, they're the same people you're going to see later on in high school. They're the same people who are going to volunteer all the way through, because there really is. There's a group of people who really care and want to do more while we're going through this. And it doesn't change much. There are people who do and don't, and some are too busy. I get it. There are people who get called away and they travel in business all the time, and they can't go to every game and do those things. So I feel rewarded by being able to be one of those people who has been a volunteer all the way through in different ways. And my wife has helped out on many things, from the Martha Jones, the elementary school, up through the high school, and in the same way. We care. Mm-hmm. We care, and she's not from Westwood, but is part of it now. Mm-hmm. And wherever I end up, I would feel that way wherever I live. But that's one part of my answer. The other part is to answer it is that I didn't go into this stuff at 20 whatever years old, 18 when I started. Yeah. I didn't go into it thinking I'm giving back to the community. I guess maybe there was a little of that, but that sort of grows on you as you grow, as you get older, right? Yeah. Right? You're a few years younger than me, and you didn't feel that way in your 20s yet either. So it didn't. It's something that you, I think, have to grow a little older to appreciate where you're at, the community you're in, and to have that awareness to say, yes, I'm conscious of this. I want to give back. I'm doing this instead of I'm just doing it. So it's all of those things.
Yeah, when I was 21, I wasn't the biggest fan of salmon. Didn't think Cheers was very funny. When I hit the wrong side of 35, I think Cheers is one of the best shows ever, and salmon is probably one of the most healthy things to eat every day. So, but certainly something I learned, and I think priorities change as you age. And what you think is important. And, when you're young, you just want to go out and have fun with your friends. But when you're older, you're like, I want to have something that's impactful, something that, is going to make me feel good, something that's going to better other people.
Agreed. Yeah, because what started out as a hobby, or Joe Guerin grabbing me, sticking me in front of the microphone, and I said, well, this is actually really fun. And then I stuck with it. Over the years, it grew into something more, or meant something more to me, because every year that I do it, I've appreciated it more and more. Now I know I'm on the backside. Now I'm not going to say that I'm on my way out, but I know that I'm closer to the end than the beginning. There's no doubt about it. So Alex is going to be a sophomore next year, a couple more years, and then I'll be done with kids. I don't know what happens after that. Mm-hmm. So I'm acutely aware of appreciating it and wanting to enjoy it, wanting to help as many people. I'm not helping them by, fixing their wounds or anything, but whatever I'm doing that people enjoy, that is adding something to the game and adding something to the community, but with what I'm writing, whatever I can do, that is good for me, and it is good for everybody else. So it's a win-win as long as I'm doing that. And I think you're the same way. And this is a good opportunity for me to say that you call me the voice of Westwood, but you have done so many games, and you have become so involved. And Evan and you guys, Charlotte, you guys have done such a great job at Westwood Media Center and covering so many games. There's no doubt to me that you are the voice of Westwood sports. Okay, I think I might be the Bob Uecker of Westwood sports, but I'm just out here to entertain and make you laugh a little bit. So thank you right back for all that you guys have done.
You are the voice. You will always be the voice, and I think we are the excitement of Westwood. We bring out the excitement on just the story and all that, and it's a great collaboration, and I love when we're in the booth together because it's fun.
I do too, and when Tom Lydon is in there, I think I didn't know that I wanted this. When I was 25 or 30 doing these games, I couldn't have imagined of this, of being older, having my kids there, and having a couple of guys in there who love it just like I do. And we're all trying to grow this thing for the community, for the kids. It's not for us. There's a little bit for us, but it's to be part of something bigger. The third time I've said it, a little cog in a very big wheel. Yeah. And that's where we are.
It doesn't get much funner than a Friday night. The booth is packed, and you guys BYOF, bring your own fun.
That's
right. It's back and forth. You and Tom chirping, having some laughs, and it's just a fun culture in that small little booth, and it makes Fridays fun. It makes volunteering fun, and certainly I encourage people in Westwood get involved. What I've learned is it's a small piece, but when a lot of people do a small piece, it really adds up, and it really creates just a fun culture and a memorable culture. And one question I want to ask you is, you grew up in Westwood. You went to Westwood High School. You had the little stop in Needham, but then you come back to Westwood to raise your family. What was that like to be able to raise your family in the town you grew up in? And also, what is the same and what's different about Westwood?
Good question. There are a lot of things that feel the same, but it is a very different town.
Yeah.
It is certainly bigger now, a generation later. And if you think of all the shopping, all the restaurants, the
totally,
changes, you can drink. When we were
It was dry town for a long time.
When we were at that age, it was like, well, there's no bars in Westwood.
Yeah.
We will have to go somewhere else.
Where would you go? Lewis's, or what was the
Lewis's was on a very long list.
Yes.
Lewis's was on it. All the bars near BC.
Yeah. Rogies around then?
Rogies was new then, but I did go there.
Mary Ann's.
Sure, Mary Ann's was the classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mary Ann's and City Side and the Greenbrier, and some of those bars where you'd end up at 2 a.m. with music that you couldn't hear.
Yeah,
because you couldn't hear anything. And if I have hearing problems as I cross 50, it's probably because of the concerts I went to and those clubs I went to. But that's the fun of it.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, so it's the town has evolved. The town has grown. But there's a groundswell of support in this town among some people to kind of keep a lid on it and not to grow too much.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's debate in town. Should we have more apartments? Should we have more housing? Should we have more of this or that? For my opinions on that, I would encourage you all to read Westwood Living in the back page in Westward.
Shout out Westwood Living.
There's another shameless plug of the week.
I agree, though, because growing up, when you grow up in Westwood and you live in Westwood, you kind of still want to keep that vintage, some of those vintage feelings, and it's sad to see when you see businesses go that have been around for a while, like when Yulden's closed many, many, many years ago.
Sure.
Like, that was sad. That was a staple, and Bergson's, and it was sad, but. It also there's some warmth though when you go to like these high school games, and I'm sure more so for you because you're seeing a lot of your classmates at games. You're calling games for a lot of your classmates' kids. What's that experience like? Does it freak you out sometimes, as if like you're back in high school when you're seeing some of your classmates?
Casavera and some of the other ones.
Dave Abdu next year will be.
Abdu will be in there. Abdu is one day younger than me. That's something we always had in common from kindergarten. We knew each other. Your birthday is April 17. You're April 18. And so we still text each other on our birthdays. And this year was a big one. But I also think of Joe Vinci. The Vinci family has been. This was the first time I did a senior night, and I said so and so is presenting to his parent. But he was presenting it to Joe Vinci. It was Joe and then Mario. But I had done that for Joe, the dad. So now I realize I've been in the booth for 2 generations. And I guess it goes fast when you look at it that way.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I didn't know your classmates until I going through the yearbook, and I'm like, I see Rick Cosavera there. And I'm sure you've called Mary Lou, with field hockey and lacrosse and whatnot.
Yep, at least once, a couple of times, yeah.
And Dave Abdu, I saw, was one of your classmates. His son, I think Jack, will be a freshman next year. So
yeah, Jake will be in the high school next year. Right, he's a year after Alex, and Dave's one day younger than me. Yeah, something we always remember from when we were kids, and now we even text each other on our birthdays. Despite this one being a big birthday. Yeah, that was rough.
So what happens if he forgets to text? Are you just not going to, in spite, are you not going to text, happy birthday back?
That's a good question. Yeah. I don't know. Are we at the age where we're just going to start to forget?
Yeah, that's what
we just won't text each other.
You could always have that excuse,
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I forgot. I'm older. But yeah, it's good to see. There are towns that have. Norwood has a reputation for having more of its people stay in town. Yep. The percentage is higher. If you go to a school in Norwood now, I say, what percentage of those kids had their parents also go here? It's a much higher percentage than in Westwood. So I was also a very small class of only 100 or 110. So there may only be 10 of us in town from my class, but that's still 10%. Yeah. And so you sort of, in a crowd, you say, oh, there's one. Oh, there's Joy. There's Rick. There's people.
Yeah. You say you remember the 1993 academic decathlon. Got to hear about this. Was that like Billy Madison? You know, what was involved in that, and like how long had that been around for? It's the first time I saw it in your book.
You know, I don't remember when it started, but I remember always hearing about it in high school. So it at least goes back to '88 or before then.
Yeah.
And when I decided to do it, I knew it was a good resume builder, and it looked like it would be. It might be hard work, but it might be fun, and it turned out to be a little of both. You know, we read a few books that were. I remember reading the Joy Luck Club.
Yeah.
Remember Amy Tan?
Yeah.
So we read that as part of academic decathlon. We had to do a few little papers, a couple little projects, but you were also trying to memorize some statistics and some things that they knew were going to be on the tests.
Yes.
So I remember driving out to Lunenburg for the actual decathlon at the end of the year, whichever month, April, May, I don't remember when it was, but Route 2, that was my first experience out there. And one kid I knew got pulled over on the way back there, but luckily got a warning. It was just a little bit of speeding. You got to be careful on Route 2, kids. Yeah, it goes from 40 to 55 and back to 40, and if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, the things you remember.
I love how you mentioned some of the teachers, and you know, it makes me remember my teachers, and I think we had a lot in common. So I wanted to rifle.
There were still probably half the staff was the same. We're 8-10 years apart, whatever we are. And
I wanted to rifle off some names, you know, just to see if you had them or remember them, or if they were there during your time.
Fired
But Mr. Ducheneau.
Absolutely, Bill Ducheneau, BC guy, wrote a letter that went in my application because I had him in Spanish, and I thought he was terrific.
Yeah.
He was great. Loved his class. We always got along. He was a very memorable guy, very funny guy. You know, some teachers were not fun and funny.
Yeah.
But he certainly was, and you learned something in the class. Yeah.
He was a foreign language. He did driver's ed. You know, during my area. Yeah, he was running the driver's ed.
Because I had Jim Pender.
Yes.
Was still doing it when I was there.
And he was big on the prom. He'd always have like a whole wall of pictures during the prom. So he was like kind of Mao before Mao. You know, with the photos.
Because Mike Mao, shout out to Mr. Mao at the high school.
Legend.
That guy is everywhere. What a great photographer. He takes pictures. And almost every senior night I've done the last 5-10 years, it's, okay, now just do what Mr. Mao says, everybody. Yes. I lean into the microphone. He's running it now.
His flow of like, all right, picture here, you guys go off here. Like he's got it down to a science. I got Miss Barraza. She was an English teacher.
She was after me. I remember the name from friends who were younger, but no, didn't have her.
You mentioned Wayne Chatterton, and he was definitely there, and I think he was there up till like 2015. Dr. Earls.
Terry Earls, T. And his son was T.
Yes.
And he was Terry. Yeah, T was a year ahead of me, I think, 92 maybe. Dr. Earls, good guy, super nice, never had him in class.
Yeah, wow.
But that just goes to show you, Chatterton and Earls, so friendly and outgoing. I remember them, they would remember me, and I never had the class. Yeah. You know, just that you see them every day and you say hi, and some people care.
Yeah. You know, a guy I think about often because of just the emergence of track and field and cross country was guy Dick Hargraves.
Yeah. Dick Hargraves I had not in a class. It might have been a homeroom or it might have been something else, but yet another guy who was very friendly, outgoing, good to all the kids. Yeah. Didn't matter if you were in his class or not.
Super nice. And he's a Westwood High grad.
I did not
Graduated
know
in 1962.
How about that?
Yeah, he was a team manager on the first ever Westwood Hockey
1962?
Team. Yeah.
So I'm going to do some math here, and I'm not going to like it. That means in 1992, he would have only been 48. I'm older than Hargraves was in high school.
Well, you look a lot better.
I don't know about that.
You're a handsome double. And then
Thank you.
There was a guy who graduated him a year after, a Westwood High Hall of Famer. He ended up being a math teacher as well with them, Ray Kodzis.
Kodzis, I remember.
BC, he's always at BC covering, I think he works there for games.
Okay, yeah, Kodzis I also remember. I might have had him for a class of something.
He did math.
Pre-calc or
and he was involved. He's in the Hall of Fame for football. He was a great football player. Yeah.
Another super nice guy.
He was golf coach for many years. And then another guy just off the top of my head was legend Doc Brown.
Oh, Dr. Brown.
Yeah. Math teacher as well.
Freshman year math.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Wild and crazy guy, Doctor.
Yeah.
Doc B. Yeah, he was. He would say he had this way of talking, and and he would just get you to do it, even if he was a little neurotic about it. Yeah, we all got it done.
Let's think of Mr. Dillon.
Yes,
a teacher, and I
he
think-
joined while I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a super nice guy. Never had him in a class.
And I think, I don't know if the Teacher of the Year award is named after him, but I mean, we could probably rifle off another 20, but these are fun.
Well, and what does it say about Westwood and Westwood High and some of the great teachers we've had that you just shouted out 5, 6, 7, 8 names,
Yes.
and almost every one of them, I said, I never had them in class, but we were friendly and they
Yes.
were always nice to
Yes.
me, and I remember them. They were great people.
The culture.
You know, there were a few teachers who were maybe a little less friendly or a little more kept to themselves, and some of them had reputations of being mean to the kids. But there were not that many of those.
Yeah.
Most of them were really great, and they were doing their best.
Yeah.
And props to them.
It's just a great culture, and they care. They care about the kids.
Yeah.
We see them at the games. You know, a lot of people have mentioned they love Mr. Mao, and he's had a great impression. They've never had him as a teacher, but he's
Right.
there. He knows their names. He you know,
Yes.
says congrats after wins and things like
Those
that.
are some of those same skills
Yeah.
that we talked about a few minutes back that you might carry with you through life.
Yeah.
You know, the skills to be with people,
Yeah.
to be able to talk to people. Those are the same skills that will translate in your jobs or in your life.
Well, Jay, this is fun. I think we might have to do another episode where I write down about 30, 40 names and we rifle off and we share some stories, you know, because it's just never ending. But
If this is number 39, then
Yes.
when you get to 78, every 39, then
Yeah.
maybe will bring me back, because I think of these people, and even a few names I didn't mention, like Walter Burrell from
Yes.
my generation.
Yep.
He was in my sister's class.
Yep.
He was such a great player and a friend,
Yeah.
you know, and he just graduated his oldest, Max, with my Maddie.
Yep.
What a great guy.
Yeah.
All of this has been really rewarding, because whether it's a hobby or a labor of love or a side gig, whatever you call it, we're doing something to better the town,
Yeah.
to make everything better for everybody. Maybe I sound like a broken record. We just enjoy being that little cog in a big wheel that helps make it run. Because that's what it's all about. You know, life is about the relationships, the people in it, while we're here.
The best is, you know, years go by, and when people come back and they say thank you, and they say what you did for me, and you know, the memories that you've had. You know, you are like the Ted Sarandis. You know, when I remember like talk radio, Ted Sarandis used to put me to sleep at night, and you know, I'm so thankful
Yes.
for that. You know, just the calm stories and all that. But you are the voice of the Wolverines, but to be able to be a part of those memories, and you know, people really remember the audio, the visual of all these big time events and these big time moments. You know, and when people describe them, they'll tell you the finite details, and you help create that because you know you have your brush on a lot of these memories. So I think, you know, I'm sure countless have come back to thank you, you know, including myself, where it was not a fun couple of years of just
Having
senior
no home
experience.
games.
Senior
Right.
year, you want to be able to have that senior experience, and we didn't, but it made it a little easier, you know, having you there and, you know, being that special piece. So
I was glad to be a little part of it. I'm glad that you remember, and anytime people say that they remember that, or they remember some of the calls I've made up there, or kids who've come back after I've coached them in youth flag football or softball or any of those great years.
Yeah.
That's extremely rewarding and good for the soul to think that you just gave a little something to that kid. It's all good.
Well, Jay, thank you so much for the time. This is a lot of fun. I think you're definitely going to be an episode. We're going to have to bring you back for you know, a recurring guest. But this is an absolute blast.
I would love to. It's great. It's great to see you both. Evan, thank you. Charlotte, the whole crew. You guys do such a great job, and Westwood Media Center should be commended. And I hope you continue to do all this great stuff that you do.
Well, we're very appreciative. And thank you, Jay. And folks, thank you for tuning in at home. Episode 39 of the Wolverine Report. Looking forward to seeing you all on the next one.